Hello and welcome to another battle report. So I've got the Demons of Chaos out again, 2,500 points, all Khorne, up against Mark's Wood Elves. I was kind of dreading this game, to be honest, because there's a few different builds that the Wood Elves can have, which would be able to dismantle my demons quite easily. I've got all Khorne, so I've got no magic defense, so I'm sort of worried about the magic buffs that can happen, particularly if it's the Law of Shadow. There's also the sort of heavy avoidance list of the Wood Elves, where you've got lots of Glade Riders and Wild Riders, which would just be able to outmaneuver me. I do have a very fast army, but I don't have Vanguards and Scouts and Ambushers and all that stuff. Or, alternatively, there's the heavy Archer build, where you've got lots of poison shots. Going into this game, I think it's unlikely my Bloodthirster will survive the game. Simply because he's just such a target for a shooting army like Wood Elves. He's the main target, so I'm probably going to end up hiding him for some of the game. He's 475 points, so I want to sort of retain those points if possible. But then again, can I win the game without using the Bloodthirster at all? I'm going to have to bring him in at some point, so we'll see. My killing blow isn't as useful as it would be in other games. There isn't exactly lots of high armor save units or characters that I'm going to get into combat with easily. My fear are always unlikely to feature that much. Wood Elves have fairly good leadership, and if I do get into combat with them, then it's trying to get into combat with them, which tends to be the hard thing, as opposed to actually sort of winning the combat. Mark reveals to me just before the game that he's painted up a unit of 30 Wildwood Rangers. Check that out. Not only have I never actually seen them in a game before, but he's got 30 of them. They've got this rule which gives them an extra attack against fear and terror causing units, which I suppose means all of my units. They're initiative 5, so they're going to strike before me. They don't have the ASF rerolls, but that's a pretty solid unit, and I'm not going to be able to. I don't have that much that can break steadfast apart from my one sort of big unit of Bloodletters, so I don't really have anything in my army that's a good matchup for that unit, so that would be quite tough to crack. And it'd be interesting to see a Wood Elf list that actually has some sort of combat fighting infantry blocks, so we'll see how we do with that. The Bloodthirster rolls up for the greater gift, the regain wounds when you cause a wound, one wound each phase, which I end up keeping. The lesser gift is the multi-wounds 2 gift, which I end up swapping out for the Sword of Striking. Normally I go for the Sword of Swift Slaying, but obviously against elves, they've got all ASF anyway. So I've got the Sword of Striking +1 to hit, which is pretty cool, because I'll be hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s against everything in his army. So I'm quite looking forward to that. He's got a level 4 on Shadow. He does take the level 4 on Shadow. He rolls up Occam's Mindrazor, Pit of Shades, the Withering, and of course the Melakoth's Mystifying Miasma. So here we are all set up for the battle line scenario. It's so refreshing as someone who plays Dwarves, to get the demons out and play with an army where I can just spread out across the full length of the table and really sort of go for it in the movement phase. The Wood Elf deployment here, you can see on the far side, he's got a unit of Scouts. They've got poison shots. And then you've got 3 lone models behind the rock there. So there's an Eagle, there's a Captain on Stag, there's a Captain BSB on an Eagle. You've then got 10 Glade Guard with poison. There's 5 Wild Riders behind them. There's the big block of 30 Wildwood Rangers in the middle there. In the wood, you've got 10 Glade Guard with the no hit modifier arrows, with the level 4 on Shadow there, who is the General. So the General isn't in the block of Eternal Guard, the General is in that smaller block of Glade Guard. And I'll talk to you about a bit of the magic items now. So that block has got the Manor of Discipline, so it's leadership 10 bubble there. And she's got the Book of Asher, and in the wood that means she's +6 to cast, which is pretty scary considering Demons of Khorne. I've got no plus to Dispel and no Dispel Scroll, so I'm kind of at the mercy of the magic phase, but so be it. 30 or 29 Eternal Guard in the wood, as you imagine. There's a Shadow Dancer, is that what it's called? The hero level War Dancer character thing. There's 5 War Dancers at the back there, and then there's the Way Watchers a little bit further forward. There's 10 of them, and then the next flank is just totally empty. My deployment, as you can see, basically just sort of got the Bloodthirster. I had more drops in him, so I was able to position the Bloodthirster after he dropped most of his units. But of course, he's got these scouts, you see, and I don't know where those scouts are going to go. There was a chance he'd put scouts in that building, so I just, positioned the Bloodthirster in a way that people in the building wouldn't be able to see him. Even though, to be honest, I doubt he'll actually put scouts in that building, because obviously I've got those flesh hounds poised to charge into the building if anything gets dropped in there. And as it happens, he decided not to and just left that whole flank open. So that side of the board, anyway, as you can see, I've got my flesh hounds there. The big horde is on that side as well. I'm just going to be lapping round on my right side of the board, as most of his stuff is in the middle and on my left, where I've got my blood crushers positioned and with the sort of furies behind them, ready to sort of be annoying and try and ensure that my blood crushers get the charge. So despite not having the +1, I managed to get first turn, which is fantastic news, especially against an army like Wood Elves. And I'm just surging forward, pretty much maximum speed with everything I can. I need to get into combat as quickly as possible. I do have the skull cannons which can shoot, but there aren't many juicy targets for the skull cannons. There are a few characters buzzing around on their own with sort of 2 or 3 wounds each, which I will try and get with the cannons. But basically those cannons are going to be in support, and perhaps I'll end up charging them in at some point as well. My tactic is to try and put pressure to engage the poison shots as quickly as possible. So there's a unit of Glade Guard that are fairly central, but kind of on my left, and the other unit of poison bow scouts are on the far left. So my Bloodthirster immediately goes to the right-hand side behind the building, where he's safe there. He's far away from the poison shots. If I can engage those poison shots that are nearer the centre quickly, and sort of keep those way watchers busy, I should be able to release the Bloodthirster on turn 2 or turn 3. But at the moment, he's hiding, and I'm happy with that. On the left side, my crushers put pressure on those poison arrow scouts by sort of getting into sort of an easy charge range there. Let's see if they want to back off, if they want to come towards me. If they decide to back off, then they'll be at long range, so they're less likely to do damage by moving and being at long range. So they'll be hitting on 5s or whatever. So let's see how they react to that. Everything else moves forwards, as you can see in the picture. Yeah, on the Winds of Magic, then I get a 9, which is Khorne, which is fitting for the first turn. I get 2 direct hits with the big rocks from the sky. Just fantastic start. One of them lands slap bang in the middle of the Eternal Guard and kills 9 of them. Boom, just crashing through that forest. Another one drops on the Eagle, which is sort of hiding behind that rock there, which I was going to shoot with my skull cannon anyway. So I guess it just sort of stops me rolling the dice for that skull cannon, because you can't pivot it in the shooting phase like other war machines. Yeah, my other cannon shoots in the shooting phase, and I think it just takes 1 wound off his BSB. So you can just see the sort of corner of the base there of the BSB, and it takes 1 wound. But this is the captain BSB on the Great Eagle, which interesting choice actually, not to have the BSB. To have a mobile BSB flying around. So it'd be interesting to see what sort of magic items. Perhaps he's got the Crown of Command or something, I'm not sure. And yeah, that's the end of my turn, quick turn 1. So it's Wood Elves turn 1, and usually on Wood Elves turn 1, you're expecting just loads of bow fire and for you to just start losing units straight away. But it wasn't like that at all. There's no charges declared. He marches straight up with this unit of what they called Wildwood Rangers, kind of baiting me to charge them with the Blood Crushers, which is not a bad move really, because I am pretty scared of that unit. None of my units want to fight that unit head on, one-on-one in the front of that unit, not even the Bloodthirster. So yeah, I mean that is a bit of a problem that I've got to deal with. I do have the Furies, of course, that I can use to chaff it up, and that's probably what I'll do, unless I can get a good sort of combo charge on it where I'm hitting it in the flank or hitting it in the rear or something like that, with something big and nasty. Those scouts that I was chasing them on the far left there do move back. Obviously they're skirmishers, so they can still sort of move back quite far and still shoot me, but there's less chance they're going to do damage now with their poison arrows because it's harder for them to hit. Everything else pretty much stays as it is, with the exception of the Wild Rangers sort of repositioning a bit to sort of hit anything on the counter charge that comes into the Wood Elf lines. And that BSB on the Eagle manoeuvring within those ruins there, which is quite a good move because everything that I have has quite a wide frontage, at least on that flank. So I can't charge the BSB where it's positioned, but it's in a good position to countercharge me as I come in there to hunt down those archers. So I'll have to think about what I do with that. Mark rolls a massive 6/6 on the magic phase, and first Wood Elf magic phase, he's got 12 dice, and he gets off all of his spells because, of course, he's on +6 to cast everything. So it's a bit ridiculous. And I find out that the big Melikoth's Mystifying Miasma is actually a 10 to cast, the big version, which is just ridiculous because he rolls 3 dice at it, and he actually rolls 2 1s and a 2. And we're both looking at those dice thinking, well, you failed, haven't you? But then he's got +6 to cast, so he only a 1/1 would have failed to cast that spell. And it was the big version, so I had to let it go. Not much, of course. I've got 6 dice, but I've got to save it for the Pit of Shades really, because that's the one I'm worried about. At least on turn 1. When it gets later in the game, it'll be the Occam's Mind Razor I'm worried about. But on turn 1, it's the Pit of Shades I'm worried about. So I let the Melikoths go. Fortunately, he just rolls a 1, but that hits my Blood Crushers in the middle. He gets the Withering off on my Flesh Hounds coming around the right flank there, threatening the Way Watchers. I do manage to dispel the pit, just rolling all 6 of my dice, and I'm just happy he didn't roll a 6/6 to cast it. And he casts Occam's on the Eternal Guard, is it? Can't remember now, but he casts Occam's on either the Eternal Guard or the Rangers. But to be honest, I'm not actually going to declare charges on my turn, so I'm happy for him to do that. In the shooting phase, then, it's not as bad as I expected. So I only lose. I lose a couple of hounds on the left-hand side because he's shooting poison arrows at it, and he gets the Hail of Doom arrow from the BSB on there. So that unit takes like 4 or 5 wounds. But then, other than that, I just lose 1 Fury in the middle. I lose 1 hound on the right-hand side. I think one of the Crushers takes off one wound on one of the Crushers. So pretty happy with that Wood Elf's turn 1 from my side, in that, from having rolled 6/6 on the magic phase and having a big barrage of shooting, I'm fairly unscathed after that. So it's Demon's turn 2, and it's not quite time to strike just yet, in that I do have charges that are within range, but it's, I want to make sure that I get the charges right. I want to make sure that I can do combination charges and charge, and I'm not going to fail these charges, right? So I don't declare it with anything, with the one exception of my Flesh Hounds on the left going into those Glade Guard with the poison shots, because I need to tie them up quickly. I need to try and get them to flee, or try and occupy them in some way so that I can release the Bloodthirster. But they lose another hound on the way in. I wasn't expecting that Hail of Doom arrow, which I should have been, to be honest. And so there's only 3 of them fighting when they get in, which is not good news, because obviously, if I lose, if I lose in 2 rounds of combat, then of course they can shoot on their next turn anyway. But yeah, that'll have to do for now. The Bloodthirster waits then. Obviously, I could have released them now because those poison shots are tied up, but he's still got those Way Watchers there. He's still got the archers with the True Flight arrows. So it's still a little bit risky. I don't want to take the risk that he's going to get lucky with a big Withering and reduce his toughness to 3 or 4 or whatever, and then hit me with a big barrage from the Way Watchers and take out the Bloodthirster. So I just can't risk bringing him out just yet, even though I suppose there's more of a chance that he would survive. But it's just such a big risk. So the Bloodthirster just waits behind that building for now. Hopefully I can bring him out next turn. I chaff up the Wildwood Rangers with the Furies, as you can see in the picture. The Horde surges forward, just unafraid of anything really at the moment. He didn't shoot it at all last turn, so it's still got 42 Bloodletters there. It's not a good matchup for the units of Elves, but I guess my tactic with this Horde will be that to charge something where I can do enough damage in the first turn so that I can grind out the combat. It's not very good against elves, period. But it's big enough so that it's very imposing, very scary, and of course characters must always be on the lookout for that killing blow. The crushers just sort of reposition a bit. My crushers on the left ignore those retreating scouts on the far left corner now and sort of cut inwards, as you can see on the picture, ready to charge in to the middle of the board. And yeah, the winds of magic are quiet. I think I just rolled a 7 on that. Both my cannons miss as they try and shoot off that BSB. Unfortunately, that would have been so good to just get that BSB with a nice cannon shot. But yeah, they both miss. And yeah, in combat, my hounds just whiff their attacks, really. I think the Glade Guard, obviously, because they strike first, don't they, being elves. So they take out a couple of flesh hounds, and so it's just one flesh hound left, or 2 flesh hounds left, or something like that. And I lose 1 to the instability, something like that. So it's Wood Elves' turn 2. Now, this is where things start to get a bit interesting, because Mark can see now that I'm lining up many charges to happen on turn 3. So what's he going to do about this big horde of bloodletters? What's he going to do about my 2 units of blood crushers bearing down on the centre of his army? He's still got his bunker intact in that wood, but with a massive horde bearing down on it, he's got to do something about it. The Rangers, of course, charge off those Furies right in front of them. He also goes in with the BSB into the flank of those Furies. Now, I'm not sure what he had in mind here, because I was thinking maybe he would try and protect that BSB a bit more rather than sort of charging it out there into the middle. But he's obviously baiting me in to charge that BSB at some point, because whether he overruns or not with that BSB, it's going to be out in the open for one of my units of Blood Crushers to charge. So let's see what his tactic is there. The captain on Stag moves into the position where the BSB was in the ruins there, as you can see in the picture. The Way Watchers on the right-hand side actually contemplated a charge into the flank of my horde. I've positioned my hounds over there in a way that those Way Watchers can't escape. Right? I'm going to charge those Way Watchers next turn. There's no way they can sort of get out of arc of my hounds. But Mark was sort of thinking, do I shoot with the Way Watchers or do I just charge them in? In the end, he decided to shoot, which is probably the more sensible decision. But he ends up shooting the blood letters, as you'll see in a minute, as opposed to the flesh hounds. But with those war dancers, though, he moves up to chaff up my horde. Now he's got a decision to make here, whether he chaffs up my horde to sort of redirect that horde into the Eternal Guard, or chaffs them up in such a way to redirect them into the path of the Wildwood Rangers. Now, obviously, it's not my decision anyway. For me, I'm obviously want to get them into the back lines there, because I think it's a fight that they're more likely to win. But then again, the Eternal Guard are stubborn, so you'd have to grind out that fight and kill them to a man. Whereas it might be possible to break that unit in the middle. If I can get the ranks and the banner in there. So to me, it doesn't really matter so much. But he decides to position the war dancers in a way so that once I hit the war dancers, I'll then go in the direction of the Eternal Guard. The Wild Riders come round the back on the flank there, and those scouts that I've decided to ignore with my crushers move up behind them. He's leaving open there a charge from my Skull Cannon. Now, I don't know what Mark was thinking there, whether he just thought, well, I'm not going to want to charge with the Skull Cannon because, it's primarily a shooting unit. But that is a very tempting charge for me, because those Wild Riders, of course, are deadly on the charge, but if you can charge them, especially with something with impact hits, then, I could easily win that fight. Other than that, the other units just, obviously stay at the back there, ready to get their round of shooting off. On the magic phase, I forget what he rolls, but he has enough to cast 1 or 2 spells, and he casts Occams on the Eternal Guard, and he miscast. And yeah, it was a big miscast because he loses 2 wizard levels, he loses Occams, and he loses the Withering. And that was fantastic for me, because it not only is Occams the spell that could change the game in the latter turns of the game, the Withering is the one that I'm worried about for the Bloodthirster, because that's the one, you drop the Bloodthirster's toughness, and then those ordinary strength 3 bow shots suddenly are something you've got to worry about. So really happy about that. Combat phase then, he charges off the Furies, and he decides to overrun with his BSB in the direction by Blood Crushers. Now, he needed a 12 to get into the Blood Crushers, so he's just got this BSB now sort of sitting in front of my Blood Crushers, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, that's a bit odd, why is he giving up his BSB like that, where I can just charge them? Now, obviously, if I do charge them, that will put me into the path of the Wildwood Rangers, which I don't really want to fight them head to head, but can I pass out that opportunity to attack his BSB? I'm not sure I can, but I wonder what magic items he has. I know he's got had the Hail of Doom Arrow. Other than that, what's he got? Who knows? So before I get into Demons turn 3, so I did forget about the shooting phase on Wood Elves turn 2 there. So he got a big volley of shots off. They take one of the Blood Crushers on my left-hand side, and he gets, with the Way Watchers and the True Fire arrows and stuff, he shoots all into the Blood Letters. Obviously, that horde's getting very close now. He wants to thin down the ranks. I think he gets about 9 of the Blood Letters, which was not bad, obviously, considering I got the ward saves off. So survived another round of Wood Elf shooting, and it's on to Demons turn 3. So Demons turn 3, and here come the charges. So I've got this Skull Cannon on the left-hand side bearing down on these Wild Riders. It actually didn't take me long to make the decision, to be honest, because it's such a juicy charge for this Skull Cannon. If I get those impact hits, obviously I get to do those hits before the ASF and take off those Wild Riders. So I'm pretty keen to do that. It's only a 7 or 8 I need on the dice, and I've got Swift Stride. They're frenzied, so they can't flee. Well, they've got their back to the board edge anyway, so that is on. I've got the Crushers, where there's only 3 of them left. They go into the Glade Guard. Now, the Glade Guard flee. This is the Poison Glade Guard. And, yeah, I fail my test to redirect, which means I'm chasing after those Glade Guard. Now, that is a bit disappointing, but it is what it is. If I fail, I'm going to be left open to this Captain on Stag charging into my flank, but nothing I can do about that, to be honest. The next unit of Crushers in the middle, which have still got 4 left, go into that BSB. Let's find out what magic items this thing has. The Horde goes into the War Dancers. Why wouldn't I? I will then be able to overrun, if I get through those War Dancers, but should be able to, into the Eternal Guard. And then the Flesh Hounds on the right-hand side charge the Way Watchers. Now, I don't think Mark measured it in his turn, but those Way Watchers were within 8 inches of the Flesh Hounds, so they didn't get to stand and shoot. It's funny because Mark was actually contemplating what to do with those Way Watchers for a little while, whether he wanted to charge them in, whether he wanted to shoot the Bloodletters or shoot the Flesh Hounds. In the end, he decided just to stay put, so they didn't get any more hit modifiers, because obviously the Flesh Hounds were already in the front. They weren't in the flank of those Way Watchers. But there was a secret option number 3, which was just retreat a little bit. You would obviously get the -1 for moving when you shot, but it would then make that charge a little bit harder from the Flesh Hounds, perhaps give you the option to stand and shoot as well. But I don't think he measured it. Perhaps he just thought he'd be able to stand and shoot already. But yeah, so those Flesh Hounds got in. And then, yeah, so everything makes the charge with the exception of those Crushers chasing those fleeing Glade Guard. On the magic phase, I roll a big double 6. Boom. It's only the second time I've ever done that with demons, but I then get to bring on 6 Bloodletters anywhere on the board. Well, 6 demons. I've been telling myself I need to paint up a few pink horrors at some point, just so that I can surprise people with, like, if I ever roll a double 6, I can bring on some pink horrors for my All-Khorne army. It's good to have pink horrors for that double 6, because you can then just 6 dice whatever spell they get, and you can also position them on the board anywhere to make best use of that spell that you roll. So I think that's quite interesting. But obviously I only had Bloodletter models, so I'm putting Bloodletters behind his little wizard bunker there. Now I don't think they'll be able to win the fight against those Glade Guard, but there's always a chance the killing blow could go off on that wizard. So stick the Bloodletters behind his lines there. What are you going to do about that? The cannon misfires and explodes. The other cannon, fantastic. What can you do? The other cannon goes straight through those Wild Riders. I think it kills 4 of them with the impact hits, and then the last one bolts it and overruns into the Scouts. The Crushers smashed through that BSB. Now, he had the Dragon Helm, right? So he's got 2 up ward against Flaming, and I've got the Flaming Banner. Now, everything is just starting to make sense now. Why was he a good cannon target on turn 2? Well, because I've got Flaming Cannons, he's got a 2 up ward against it. But, the sheer volume of attacks that I had, obviously getting 3 Crushers in there, so I've got my 3 Bloodletters, one of them's the champion, I've got my 3 Blood Crushers, everything attacking, and wounding on 2s. I just sneaked through enough wounds anyway, and he's destroyed. So it was bittersweet with his 2 up ward, but it wasn't enough to save him. The Bloodletters obviously win against those war dancers, but he has that 3 up ward dance, which means that they don't all die. Obviously, they'll win the combat and they flee, but they get away, which is a bit annoying because they've fled now into a position where, if they rally, of course, which is likely, they're in the way of my Flesh Hounds getting into the flank of that Eternal Guard later on in the game. Or as in, they can chaff up those Flesh Hounds. But we overrun into the Eternal Guard bunker. Now, I'm not particularly optimistic about that fight of the Bloodletters in the Eternal Guard. Obviously, the Eternal Guard in the wood, they fight in 4 ranks because they've got spears as well, and they're in a wood. So they're going to do a lot of damage. They've got ASF. I'm only toughness 3 anyway. On the charge, I'm strength 5 on the charge, so I'm hoping to do enough damage to just thin down that unit enough when I finally get to attack, so that I can just grind out the combat and eventually just kill them all, because they're stubborn as well. So I've got to kill all of them, probably got to kill all of them. I'm not, because I'm probably going to be losing combat every turn. But hopefully I can just kill enough of them in that first round to increase the chances that I can just grind out the combat before I lose the whole unit. But anyway, that won't happen till the next turn, so I don't have to worry about that. Occam's Mindrazor. What else happens? Yeah, so the Hounds beat the Waywatchers, they flee, but they only flee 3 inches and stay on the board after I'd already elected to reform instead of pursue. But all in all, I can't complain because I've got all my charges off. I've killed his BSB. I've, got my big horde into his wood at the back there. And of course I've got this cheeky unit of Bloodletters behind his bunker. So everything's kind of going the way of the Demons after Demons turn 3. Bit upset I lost my cannon to a misfire. And still not exactly sure how I'm going to tackle this big unit of what they called Wildwood Rangers, but I have managed to release the Bloodthirster. So the Bloodthirster finally moves out from behind his hidey hole, and he's in a position to charge on turn 4. So let's see how we go. So it's Wood Elves turn 3, and the only charge is that Captain on the Stag into the flank of my Crushers that failed to charge in the past turn. Not looking good there, but hopefully I can lose the combat by a minimal amount and still have enough left to turn and face him for the next round of combat. His Wizard Bunker spins round to face those newly appeared Bloodletters behind his lines. Everything rallies, so the Glade Guard in the middle, the Waywatchers, the War Dancers all rally. Shame I didn't manage to cut any of that down, but it is what it is. And yeah, that's it. So it's, Wood Elves turn 3, and there's no shooting. That's what you want, really. Wood Elves only getting 2 rounds of shooting in before you're on top of them. What are they called? The Rangers. I keep forgetting the name. The Rangers charge off the Furies again, of course. So there's no more Furies, and I'm going to have to deal with that unit next turn. But the Bloodthirster's there, so hopefully I should be able to. They spin round to face the Blood Crushers, so everything's in the front. What happened in the Magic phase? Now, for some reason, I can't remember exactly. Did he get off Pit of Shades? I would have remembered if he had. I think he just cast Melikos on something. But for some reason, I can't remember what got Melikosed. But yeah, it couldn't have been that significant because I can't remember at all. and we move on to close combat. So the bloodletters hit this unit, and they do well. They lose quite a few. I think they lost. Yeah, that was it. I think it was ended up being a drawn combat or something. So because they killed about 9 bloodletters, and I killed about 9 Glade Guard or Eternal Guard, something like that. The War Dancer character on the corner there did the 3-up ward again, which is annoying because it means that I'm not able to kill it, and I've got to throw some attacks into it. But I think it was like a drawn combat, which suits me fine really, because at least I'm not rolling for demonic instability. I did have the Bloodthirster within range there, but it's always a big gamble. The other combat, of course, is just on the far flank where my Skull Cannon had got the charge and sees off those scouts and manages to pass its test of restraint and spin around, which is fantastic because it's my turn next, and that Skull Cannon can then do another charge and help out the Crushers that are beset by this captain on Stag. So looking forward to turn 4 now. Demons turn 4. Okay, so charges to declare. I've got my Skull Cannon into the back of that captain on Stag, and he can just squeeze in there behind the terrain, which is great because I get those cheeky impact hits. I've got my new unit of Bloodletters which charge into the Wizard Bunker. It's about time I get to swing some attacks against that level 6 Wizard, or level 4 Wizard now because he's level 2, but still on the +2 for being in the wood and having the Book of Asher. I've got my Hounds charging into the side of those War Dancers. Now, Mark hasn't chaffed me up in a way that would take me towards those Way Watchers or anything. I'm a bit annoyed I can't recharge those Way Watchers, but I'm just not facing the right way. But hopefully I can go through those War Dancers and hit the flank of that Eternal Guard and join into that combat, but we'll see. I then charge the Blood Crushers and the Bloodthirster into the Wildwood Rangers. Now, I've got to put the Crushers in there because obviously if the challenge comes, I don't want the Bloodthirster stuck in a challenge, and I want to just clip that Bloodthirster on the side of the unit rather than putting it into the middle of the unit and having to take lots of attacks back. So I've got to charge those Crushers in as well. They do get to hit first and kill my Crushers, but hopefully the dice will save me, but we'll see. Even if I lose combat, hopefully it won't be by too much, and I can, start to just mince that unit and get some rear charges on it on turn 5, because obviously hopefully I can kill this Stag, and on turn 5 I can join that combat. But I decided to just go for it. And just hope that those Rangers don't go to town on the Blood Crushers and stack up the combat res enough to force an instability test on the Bloodthirster. Should be alright because obviously with the Thunder Stomp and the Stomp should be enough to stack up the combat res on my side too. I do the I forget about the Winds of Magic, which don't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but having to roll on that table is always a bit of a gamble. +1 ward save, -1 ward save. Anything could happen. But yeah, so we go straight into combat. The Flesh Hounds on the right hand side don't manage to get through those dancers, which is a bit annoying. Again, they had the 3-up ward save off, and I think they passed their break test of like Leadership 5 or something, and so the Flesh Hounds are stuck in combat with them, and those Way Watchers are ready to charge those Flesh Hounds in the flank next turn if they desire. I was hoping to get the Flesh Hounds into the flank of those Eternal Guard to help out, but yeah, that happened. And then the Eternal Guard proceed to absolutely mince those Bloodletters, killing swathes of them. I do nowhere near as many wounds in return, and then I lose a bunch of Bloodletters to the instability as well. And so it's looking kind of ropey there. I don't know if I'm going to have enough Bloodletters left to actually be able to grind out that combat. I was going into that fight with many more bodies than the Eternal Guard, but they're quite handy, They're rerolling missed hit rolls. They're obviously I'm only toughness 3, so they got force to wound, which is doable. So it's looking a bit dicey there, but we'll see if the Bloodletters can hang on in. The highlight of the combat phase is, of course, my cheeky little Bloodletter unit, which has got into those Glade Guard at the back and they get a double, yes, a double killing blow on that wizard, and 2 of my bloodletters roll a 6 to wound on the wizard, and just you can just see their swords sort of meeting in the middle as the wizard's head just flies into the air. Oh, fantastic! I'm so glad we managed to finish off that wizard. In the main combat in the middle, then the Blood Crushers and the Bloodthirster get into the front of those Rangers, and the Rangers whiff, and I'm just so happy they do it, because it was a bit touch and go there. I was kind of worried that they would just hack up that whole Crushers unit, and then I'd be really behind and have to make it up all with the Bloodthirster. And if I roll bad with the Thunderstorm, I could end up losing combat heavily. But they don't kill; they only kill one of the Crushers. I then proceed to just mince up that unit. I think the Bloodthirster kills 5 or 6. I then roll heavy on the Stomps and Thunderstorms, and I kill about 16, 18 Wildwood Rangers. So yeah, I win combat heavily. They're still steadfast, unfortunately, and so they stick, but it's looking like that combat is going to go my way, and that the Bloodthirster has still got all his wounds. I finish off that stag, of course, because the impact kit hits coming on in the back, and the 2 beasts are able to kill that captain as well. So it's a big turn for the demons, and it's looking like it's going to be hard to come back for the Wood Elves. So unfortunately, I don't have many pictures of Wood Elves turn 4, but it does turn out to be the last turn of the game. There isn't much movement or shooting to be done, and with the wizard dead, there isn't any magic either. So we just sort of move on to the main combats, really, just to see how the sort of main things are settled. There is a stalemate combat on the far right there with the Way Watchers and War Dancers on those Flesh Hounds. The rest of the Glade Guard managed to finish off those last few bloodletters that had appeared at the back, but there's no VPs to be gained from those units anyway. The Horde against the Eternal Guard just sort of carries on, with both sides losing a few on each side, and it comes to another stalemate. That is after I managed to killing blow that War Dancer guy, because he no longer has his 3-up ward save. So good to kill that hero as well. And then the Wildwood Rangers combat goes the way of the demons again, and we managed to slaughter another whole bunch of them, and then they flee, and we finally cut them down. Mark actually forgot about his gleaming pennant at that point, and so he would have actually carried on for another turn, but it was looking pretty bleak for those Wildwood Rangers after the absolute decimation they got on that first round of combat. And of course, I've got my units behind them ready to come in on Demons turn 5 anyway. So after turn 4, we decided to call it. We were kind of running out of time at the club anyway. It looked like a bit of a significant victory for the Demons. All in all then, a really enjoyable game. It was a lovely list that Mark was playing. He's got a sort of eclectic mix of models there, where he's got some of the old models and some of the new models. A unit of Wildwood Rangers, big block of Wildwood Rangers, which I've never faced before, so that was quite fun. And it wasn't a sort of typical Wood Elf list where he's got dozens and dozens of bow shots or loads of fast cavalry that you're trying to catch on the board. It was a really fun list to play. There were a couple of cheeky things in there where he had a couple of he had the Dragonbane Gem and the Dragon Helm. I wonder why he had those. Anything to do with the flaming cannons by any chance? But that was it was a cool army to play, and ended up being a good matchup for the Demons, because the very manoeuvrable Wood Elf list, or a Wood Elf list with lots of poison, would be very difficult to face. A few things that I want to work on in the future for the Demons, so maybe I can try and sneak a BSB into the list. Not really to do with the break tests, but it's more the test to restrain and the test to redirect. Having your units pursue when you don't want them to pursue is annoying, because they get out of position and they can die. And testing to redirect as well. I failed that redirect test, which could have had a big impact on the game as well. So trying to sneak a BSB in there might be something to think about in the future. And then maybe splitting up this Bloodletter Horde. There aren't many things that the Bloodletter Horde can take on. The Bloodletters are pretty weak. The killing blow is good, and if you're up against a unit of knights for something like that, then that's a very difficult fight. for the knights. But against most units, certainly other infantry units, elves especially, the Bloodletter Horde struggles, and it's basically just relying on having enough bodies there to survive the game and not give away the points. So maybe splitting that up into 2 units and just sort of using the Bloodletters a bit more sparingly. Yeah, so food for thought anyway for the future. But yeah, really pleased with how the army went. It's always good having the Flesh Hounds. They tend to catch people out, and they've actually got just as many wounds as the Crushers, because it's sort of 6 models times 2 wounds as opposed to 4 models times 3 wounds. And you see you've got these, fast Blood Crusher units, fast Flesh Hound units, all with 12 wounds each. And of course, they've got the Demon Save, and so you've got these tough units that are very fast, and you can get across the board really quickly. Always refreshing as a Dwarf player, as I said at the beginning, to have a fast-moving army and just play sort of free-flowing Warhammer as opposed to defensive Warhammer. So, yeah, enjoyable game. Glad I got the first win against the Wood Elves with the Demons there. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. And if you got this far, give me a like, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment if you're so inclined. See you next time, folks. Goodbye.